And going back to your previous question, some of those signs that you're due for reinvention, you know that you're due for a surrender, is when you find yourself holding tightly onto something and you're stuck in your position about something, and maybe the reoccurring arguments are coming up with people that maybe you care about, or reoccurring situations keep circling back around. Because my belief and my understanding about this world is the world is here for you. It is giving you and working on your behalf. And things are happening for you, not to you.
Hi, I'm Glennis Woods Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. I love having guests that help you really think about where you are in a particular time, especially as we go through this whole midlife journey that we're all on. That's why we're listening, right? Because we want to figure out what's the best way to vibe? What's the best way that we can still stay vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered during this wonderful kind of wide angled lens that we're participating in midlife. I say wide angle because there's so many different things that we go through and so many different ways that we can address it. That's why I'm so excited to have with us Dr. Naeema. From Crisis to Triumph, Dr. Naeema doesn't just inspire change, but she builds it. After a decade as a chiropractor, a cycling accident led her to radically reinvent her life. And she closed her practice, traveled solo to 13 countries, and founded Every Damn Thing LLC to help women over 40 reclaim their power. Now she's a reinvention coach, a speaker, and author of Raised as a Wife. Dr. Naeema empowers high-achieving women to rise from burnout and to break generational patterns and to thrive with purpose. It is so wonderful to have you here, Dr. Naeema. Thank you for joining me on the My Living podcast today.
I am so excited about the energy that just exudes from you. We are going to have such an incredible conversation. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, you're welcome. I told you, I already loved you already because my granddaughter had your name. I said that she had your name because she's only 9 years old. So you got it first. So when I saw your name, I thought, oh, yeah, I definitely want to have her on the show. Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. First, want to talk about a little bit about your prior career and how you transitioned in or changed, if we're going to be talking about change and transition, into what it is you're doing now.
Yeah. It's so interesting as we are having this conversation around change, because it is the one thing that is inevitable. It is the one thing that guides our entire existence. Everything from the smallest of cells to the largest of skies, right? Everything changes and everything is energy. And we think that if we cling on to things and we hold tight, or we have some sort of idea that we can exhibit just enough control, that we are going to prevent change. But the truth is that we are change. Each and every moment we are different humans, and everything that we look upon also falls under the category of change. And I think this idea around how is it that we view ourselves and where it is that we are in whatever season that we are in. And when the questions that I began asking myself is, what's possible now? Because I was stuck. I was stuck in this idea that I identified myself as a chiropractor, as a primary healthcare provider. I labeled myself as this ambitious, high-achieving woman and entrepreneur. And those labels and titles started blending in with this very expensive doctor title. And then it became very difficult for me to differentiate who Naeema was without the titles, without the labels. And what did that mean for me in this season of my life? And I got to tell you, the answers that came to me, I came upon because they already existed, really did shock me.
It's interesting because people will ask me, what was your bottom line? What was the moment when you decided just to walk away from, in my case, I walked away from corporate America after 25 years and had a very successful C-suite. Finally got up to that C-suite and was basically had been diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. And so a lot of people ask me, when was that bottom line when I decided that's it? When was yours? When did you just find, okay, and I'm walking away from this thriving chiropractic practice and doing something else?
I was laying on the floor of my practice, which is super interesting because that's the story that opens the memoir that I wrote. And yet again, another moment of lying on the floor of my practice. Now, this is 3 years later, and I think that I have survived. I have survived all the things, right? The relocating to Georgia from Southern California with my 3 kids, husband, 2 dogs, and I have survived chiropractic school when I decided that I would return back to school. I survived the death of both of my parents suddenly. I survived the divorce of a marriage that fell apart after 2008, the economy crashes. And here I am once again trying to figure out how am I going to survive this other thing. And so I am holding so tightly onto this practice that I have built and holding so tightly onto these titles and labels. And I'm trying to survive this accident, the cycling accident that I had that ended me up in the emergency room and surgery and all of this pain. And months later, I'm trying so hard and I fall. I used to see a lot of pediatric patients, and one of my little kiddos is running around. She's just being her normal, boisterous kid self, and she trips me, and I fall. And here I am again, lying on the floor of my practice, and I'm in so much pain because the surgery has taken its toll, because the injuries are a lot, because I should have never went back to work when I did, but my career had taken a turn where my associate doctor had left the practice. It was only me. And now I'm just self-employed, right? All I've done is employ myself, which means that if I'm sick, my business is sick. And I am back in practice when I know that I should still be on bed rest and working on rehab. And I'm laying on the floor and I can see from my angle that I can look into the other rooms where there are patients waiting, and I can see just their feet laying at the end of at the table. And they're all waiting for me to come in and fix them and to help them move along their health journey and to get them out of pain. And I'm laying there, steeped in my own pain. And I heard very clearly from God, how much more is it going to take? And at that moment, I was like, hands up, hands open, hands up. I surrender. Here's my white flag. I can't take any more injuries. I can't take any more pain. I'm going to just trust and start asking the question, what's possible now? Not what was possible then, not what was possible 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, none of that. What's possible right now? And let me surrender to whatever answer that is.
The second woman I've talked to today, I talked about the need to surrender. This morning, when I woke up, I get up super early, and a lot of my friends are on the East Coast and the South. And I saw a post by my friend, and she was just saying, you know what, I surrender. She said, there's nothing else I can do. I give up. And she didn't say what she was talking about. So it was 4:30 here in California, which means it was 7:30 there. I said, I don't care. I'm calling her right now. What the heck is going on? It was like, talked with her a couple of weeks ago. Everything was okay. And so I called. I said, what's going on? She said, I saw your post. And he said, which post did you see? I said, you went and what and what? What's going As he told me that basically what that was all about was that she has a friend that she knows since college. who is dying of terminal pancreatic cancer. And no matter what she and her friends tried to do, the reality is this is it. At any time, she may get that phone call. And she was just feeling so deflated because this was a person who did all the right things. In fact, she was a yogi, natural food, and all that kind of stuff. And I said, is it in her family history? She said, that's one thing we didn't know because she was adopted. So we didn't know that sometimes, no matter how we live, these kinds of things can happen. And no one knows the reason why. Only God knows the reason why he takes us on that path. But she said, I decided to surrender it because I realized that as a human being, there was nothing else I could do. The only thing I could do, the only thing I must do is surrender and turn it over to God and let him handle it. And I was thinking about that. Then you mentioned it again, because there is strength in surrender, weakness.
Please say that again.
Yes, the son of strength.
And there is freedom in it because we walk around as these great, big, smart, intelligent human beings. We walk around with this level of arrogance that somehow that we don't have to essentially capitulate with what's happening in the universe. We are not running it anyways. We have this idea that we are actually controlling things, and we are not. And because we walk around with this self-inflated idea that we give ourselves more power than we actually have, and we have strapped on these boulders of responsibilities onto our back that God nor anyone ever assigned to us. And we're carrying the weight and the burden of things that we cannot control anyways. And the moment you release, there is freedom and there is peace and there is serenity. Now, the idea is not to let it go, not to surrender and release, and then 5 minutes later, pick it back up, right? Like how often have we heard in church services or even at the therapist's office, or if you choose to go to retreats and or just get a massage, and they say, and there's a sign on the door, or they declare, leave your troubles here before you walk into this sanctuary. You can pick it up if you'd like to on the way out. And so this idea for us, for me specifically, because I cannot speak for anybody else in this wisdom of this age that I have gotten to now, what I do know is that I am the decider. I get to choose how it is that I show up. And what I am choosing not to do is to pick up all of those troubles. I am no longer going to pick them back up and hoist them back on to my back. If I've surrendered, then it's time to release them and be open to what's available in this now.
Is that how women began that journey of, because so many women feel stuck, but don't really realize they're actually being called to evolve. It's an opportunity. When you're feeling that way, you can view it as an opportunity. You can reframe it. But so many women don't allow themselves to get there. What are some of the hidden signs that we need to be looking for when someone's really overdue and needs to go ahead and jump off the diving board into reinvention?
I love the way that you framed it, and I'm just going to highlight it. It's an invitation, and we don't recognize it as an invitation because we have entered into a game that was already in practice. We didn't design the board. We didn't create the rules. We do not have all of the information of this game that is already in progress. We know what we know when we know it. And because we are not the designers of these systems and structures that are already in place, because we are not the architects of capitalism and this idea of consumerism and these social mores and all of the agreements that Miguel Ruiz talks about in the 4 agreements, because we didn't already create and design, and we certainly didn't personalize and customize this game for us, because if we had, then we would have designed it in a different way. But because we haven't, and we've taken on these sort of roles and objectives as if that they are ours, which makes it less appealing to surrender because we're trying to hold steadfast in this system of organized scarcity. And because it is what we've been steeped in and we're conditioned in. And so we've got this program that's running constantly in the background that is telling us, be fearful, run as fast as you can, keep the treadmill moving, keep the plate spinning. Don't you dare let one of these things down, because what does that say about you? And I think, wow, we've had conversations as Black women and as Black people, this idea and this perception that we're a monolith. Women the same. We are not a monolith. All rules do not apply. And so when you pick up these ideas and these frameworks, you have to know that it is not designed for in your best interest. It might be designed for the thriving of something or somebody else. And so differentiating how and what serves us, I think, is probably the greatest thing that we can do to give ourselves back our own power and decide, like, you can choose joy. The challenges might look daunting, but you could also choose joy. It is an invitation to who that you want to become in any given moment. And you can choose a lightheartedness even in pain and even in struggle.
I love this passage from one of my favorite passages from the Bible is about when Paul is in prison in Romans. And he supposedly was in a prison with sewage up to his knees, open sore wounds, just not in a good place. And I often wonder, where did he get the pencil and a piece of paper? But anyway, I digress. Evidently, he wrote about his experience saying that he has learned to be content in his current circumstances. And it's the same kind of thing, learning to have joy regardless of what's going on around you, focusing on the things that are working in your life rather than focusing on what you consider to be all the things that are not. I have always found that when you start listing all the things that are working and all the things that aren't working, if you're really honest with yourself, it's that one or two key things that aren't working. It's not everything. There's still so many other things that are working. But we've been so oriented and indoctrinated to think that if something's not working, whatever it is, then there's something wrong with us. And then therefore we need to get that under control so that we can add that to the working column. Whereas you've mentioned that when it comes to reinventing ourselves, it's not about trying to change all that, trying to change what's not working to the working column. It's more about coming home to yourself. And I understand that because so much of who we think we are is an invention of what we think we should be.
Yes. Yes. And isn't that the truth? And going back to your previous question, some of those signs that you're due for reinvention, you know that you're due for a surrender, is when you find yourself holding tightly onto something and you're stuck in your position about something, and maybe the reoccurring arguments are coming up with people that maybe you care about, or reoccurring situations keep circling back around. Because my belief and my understanding about this world is the world is here for you. It is giving you and working on your behalf. And things are happening for you, not to you.
And so, I say that all the time.
Yeah.
I say that all the time, Dr. Naeema, that the midlife is not happening to you. It's happening for you. Menopause is not happening to you. It's happening for you. This time of our lives, unlike any other time, is an opportunity to really take the sum total of all of our experiences and the wisdom that we have gathered and using that to peel back the layers to see what we really want for our lives. We have enough information now to be able to make that determination. We thought we were doing it in our 30s and 40s. I look back at my 30s and 40s, it's in my 30s, but I thought I knew it all. And back then, I just became a manager. I know, I just became a manager, and I had people working for me in my 40s and 50s. I look back at that now and think, why? I bet they thought I was intolerable because I know it. They're probably like, he with a girlfriend. You'll find out how much you don't know. And at 68, I'm very well aware of all the things that I do not know. There is strength, again, in recognizing who you are, who you're not, and maybe what you want to be. And all of it's okay.
All of it is okay. That's the thing. It is all okay. Like to your point earlier, like we want to make things wrong, right? We want to say, if this isn't happening in the way that I have imagined it, then it's wrong. But the truth is, I spent 10 days here recently out of Vipassana Meditation Center doing their 10-day silent course. And it was probably one of the most challenging and transformational experiences that I've had simultaneously, right? Like childbirth, super, super hard. And oh my God, but then you've got this baby at the end, right? It's one of those, like the most transformational experience. And also just this incredible, beautiful experience as well. And one of the things that I was reminded during this course was this idea around non-attachment. We are so attached. We cling to the things that we want and we must have it because we envisioned it and or somebody else envisioned it for us and or that's what we should be doing or should have or that's how it should unfold. If we stop shoulding on ourselves long enough to recognize that if we take a step back, release our attachment to whatever the outcome is, recognize what is. It just is. And this idea around the isness gives us freedom because it just is. And in those moments, who are you choosing to be? Who are you choosing to be? And what are you inviting into your space? And how do you want to engage with the people that you love the most? Like, you are going to be remembered, as Maya Angelou said, about how you made people feel. How did you make yourself feel? And how are you making others feel? Because you get to choose. We are all doing this collaborative dance together and we rely on one another. And I think to the degree that we take our roles seriously in that we have a responsibility not only to ourselves, not only to the attachment to the things that we're clinging on to, but also to the people that we're doing this dance with. So who do you want to be? And how do you want to show up?
Wow. For the women who are listening to this, who are feeling stuck, feeling lost, feeling tired of the whole idea of starting over again and transformation and change, what's one small thing that maybe she could do starting today to begin to feel better and rise again?
I think it's a mindset shift. The question is so brilliant because it also assumes, and we should unpack that, it assumes that reinvention and transformation mean that A, you're starting all over from scratch, B, you're breaking everything down and throwing it all out with the wash, and that C, it's just going to be super, super hard. And I would just like to push up against that and say, absolutely not. Reinvention is not ditching the things that you have already come to know and learn. It is about taking the wisdom that you have garnered over your years and then remembering who you have always been. Like the part of you, the version of you that you remember and tune back into before the world told you who that you ought to be, who you should be, who you needed to be. Before that version, before that dumping onto you, that's the woman that you need to get reconnected to. And in order to do that, for me, that small but ginormous step, it's a mindset shift.
I say all the time that how our lives turn out has so much to do with what's going on between these two ears, those conversations that we have. And I really, really feel like I didn't come into my own, and I'm still evolving, but really didn't make the decision to come into my own until I got into my 60s. I really didn't. I stopped being a helicopter parent a couple of years ago. And at that time, my youngest was like 31. Was in a state of evolving. Just this morning, I have to catch myself sometimes because we're all on a journey. And we're on that journey for a purpose. And as we get older, I feel that our roles begin to change. You're no longer hands-on helicoptering, but you're more like a coach, a friend and a coach. You make the suggestions, you have the observations, and then you sit back and sit on your hands, put a paper clip on your lip, and try not to say anything. Just let them go through that experience. I have a daughter on her way to South Africa right now, and I said, okay, I'll talk to you in the morning before you leave because I just want to check you. I got busy and I missed the time to call. So I called her and she was on the run right and you take off. I said, I'm so sorry. She's a mom. It's okay. I'm 41 years old. I have traveled to 15 countries in the last year and a half. It's okay. We put these things on ourselves, these expectations on ourselves that maybe at one time might have been relevant, but because of change and transition, it's now time to maybe reinvent how we look at that, which actually means quite right. I can begin to come back into myself and talk about what's important to me. All my kids are grown and gone through the empty nest for the last 12 years. So the whole idea of helicoptering and feeling guilty if I didn't talk to them before they got on their cruise, all the different things that we do to ourselves just isn't relevant anymore. And the only thing that's going to be able to change that way of being is me.
Yeah, that is so beautiful when you step into that awareness. I think once again, this conversation, what we keep centering is the peace that you gain from the wisdom of knowing when to release and let go. I got to say that when I was in my 30s, I heard an interview that Oprah was talking about herself over the decades. And what she was referring to was like, if she looked at the decade in its entirety, what did she gain from it and what did she learn from it? And I was in my 30s and I heard her say the 20s, we think we know it all. The 30s is when you're figuring out you don't necessarily know it all, but you still got enough bravado and confidence. You're going to keep moving in the direction. When there's wisdom that starts really stepping into the picture in your 40s. And she was in her 50s at the time. And she said, but man, these 50s, wow, this is something really nice. And whatever other things that she went on to say. So here I am, mid-30s. I've got 3 small kids. And I just remember thinking, 50s. And boy, did I attach this entire vision when I tell you, Linus, I knew that when I turned 50, me and Buddha were going to be hanging out. That's how enlightened that I was going to be. I am 54 and wasn't more than 2 weeks ago that I was having an emotional meltdown about some madness. What is this BS that is happening right now? I didn't see this coming because what I thought was that I would have had it all figured out. And the truth is that we are constantly evolving and shedding things and letting go and releasing. And then we gather up some stuff that we didn't even recognize that we became Velcro for and it stuck onto us. Or maybe we'd gone through a valley and we were supposed to pass through, but we erected a whole 2-bedroom condo and now we're Airbnb in it. I was like, wait, hold on. Let me tear that. Because I was supposed to pass through, right? And so the thing that I ultimately like to remind myself, and I certainly suggest that your listeners do the same. Whenever you get in a sort of this space where you're shooting on yourself or you're thinking about what you thought it might have, would have, could have looked like, that instead you just take a breath. And in that breath, you give yourself a tremendous amount of grace.
Oh my goodness. My favorite word, grace. And some people go, that's just an excuse. No, it's not an excuse. It's an awareness of the fact that you really aren't in control, nor do you feel you should be. And also the recognition that many times people won't give you grace, not because they don't care, not because they don't love you or any of that. It's because they're dealing with their own stuff.
They haven't given themselves grace. No, they can't. They haven't given themselves grace, and they certainly don't have capacity to give you prayers.
And that's a whole other conversation, isn't it? In terms of projection and what we feel people should be doing. I tell my children all the time, then honey, that's what you would do. based upon your life experience and how you've been raised and everything else. But that person's not you. So therefore, you shouldn't allow yourself to be disappointed when they don't do what you would have done. Not to say that what you would have done, that's the right thing to do, the right thing to do, all that kind of stuff. But that's not where they're at. So you have to make a decision in general over your overall life when it comes to how you want to live and how you want to be. You also want to take a look at who do you want to have around you.
Yeah.
Because what is that saying? Your life looks the most like the top 5 people that you're with all the time.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm thinking, okay, so what is that saying? Because usually I'm around my kids all the time.
That means you're incredibly smart. You're a wise woman because you raised them well.
They have become in many ways my best friends. And I guess while they become my best friends, they're not my validation. They're not my validation. You have to be careful about that. That any human being is your validation because humans will let you down every single time. Not on purpose, but because they're human. If not robots, even computers and AI and all those other things let us down. Why? Because they were created by humans. And I think when we begin to push people and ourselves with that knowledge of humanity that we're not perfect, that we're going to let ourselves down, that we're going to make mistakes, I would hope that would make it that much easier for us to get back up, as I found out, wipe yourself off and start all over again. That's pretty much how my life has been. You get knocked down, take a deep breath. People will ask, what keeps you resilient? I have to ask you, Dr. Naeema, what keeps you resilient?
I love that question because it is me being centered in my faith and recognizing my connection and understanding of my relationship with the divine, that it isn't up to me. Like I am just like we all are. We are co-creating with the divine, with source, however you define that. All of us share one purpose, and that is to reflect and reveal the divinity in whatever our unique way is. And that looks as different as all of our own individuations of our fingerprints, right? And so for me, centering myself back into I'm having a human experience and human emotions and human doingness. But if I sit and really connect and center myself in my being and my connection to the divine, like that's the thing that I find so much solace and comfort in, because when you recognize like you're not running things, and this idea that you are also not responsible for all things, and that to your earlier point, that you allow people to be who they are. And when you realize that you don't have to control others and what they're doing and all the things, that also allows for you to really focus on yourself. And I think that when we are not, we all catch ourselves trying to micromanage or being hyper vigilant over somebody else. That's because we're not willing in that moment to take a look at ourselves.
Oh my goodness. You said a word there. I say all the time to myself, to my husband, to the girls, to my friends, that when you're identifying something that really irritates you about something that someone else is doing or how they are in their behavior, the reality is you recognize that because it's something that you have yourself. So I try not to criticize people or talk about folks or anything else. Don't do any of that, because in back in the day, you pointed someone that's pointing back at you. But recognize that behavior because you had that behavior. Self-development and working on the becoming kind of thing is a full-time job. It's totally engrossing, where you really don't have a whole lot of time to, or shouldn't have a whole lot of time to worry about what everybody else is thinking, doing, and all of that. And in midlife, I think you really begin to have a lot of that. And I can tell you something that my grandfather told me when he was in his late 80s or so. And we're just having one of our talks that we used to have a lot of talks. I'm so grateful that I got a chance to really know my grandfather. And I said, Granddaddy, how did you become so wise? He says he had a very distinguished voice when he talked. He called him Professor Wiz. He was a...
Like an oracle? Okay.
Yeah. He said, well, Liz, I think like this. You're always in a state of becoming until you have became. And when you became, you're not here anymore. He says, so every day I gain wisdom until it's time for me to go, and then I became, and then I'm gone. So you never really became. You're always becoming. You're always living. You're always evolving. And I've always remembered that, because I said, It's right, because when we get to the becoming, we became, we're good. There. So you want to keep evolving. There's nothing wrong with changing. There's nothing wrong with embracing a transition, or in this case, for midlife women, embracing the aging process, which is a whole nother conversation that I'd love to have with you, Dr. Naeema. Now, tell us about your book. I know you wrote a book. Give us the title and what is it about?
Yeah. It's a memoir. It is about a little brown girl, me, who grew up in an all-white family, in an all-white neighborhoods and all-white schools, and who was told that she also was white. But one look in the mirror, and if you're watching this on video, you can clearly see, even though the curls are in the back, that not a day in its life have these curls been blonde, have these eyes been blue-eyed, like my brother and sisters, and that I am white. But if you don't have language, you don't have a context, and you don't have exposure, then you can only believe what the people who love you and are caretaking you say and what they declare. And so I did not know. Even though I asked, I certainly was shut down and didn't find out until I was nearly 18 when we moved to a very small town in Arizona, and I was threatened by some senior boys. The town had no diversity, and it was a desert town in Arizona, really tiny little town with one stoplight, and they were threatening me that they were going to take me out to this really far place in the desert where all the kids would go out to the sand dunes and drink and do whatever stupid things that high school kids do, that they were going to take me out there and they were going to lynch me. And I didn't know what lynching meant. I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't know what it meant. And I was smart enough to know that I was afraid. And I went home to tell my sister, and I said, don't tell mom, because didn't want to upset my mom. And my sister did the wise thing, and she told my mom. And so my mom that night had to have a conversation with me that I had no idea of. I just knew that I was always on the outside, always didn't fit in, always didn't look like everybody else, but I didn't know any reason. I could not define it for myself. And that was when I found out. And so the memoir is called Raised as a Lie, and it chronicles my growing up years and essentially me becoming and stepping into what does that mean to be a Black woman in the world, and some of the trials and tribulations and finding my own way and my footing, and how do you navigate through all of that. And I didn't write it until my 49th year. And up until then, I had been telling a story and a narration of my growing up, my childhood. Oh, it was fine. Oh, it was normal. Oh, it was like if I spoke about it at all. And it wasn't until I got my heart broken at 49 that opened everything, literally cracked it wide open. And that was the first time that I found myself devastated laying on my practice floor. And I spent a year in therapy and doing really deep inner work. And what came on the other side of that year's work was this memoir that I initially didn't want to publish. I wrote it essentially for me and to document my healing and what it looked like to own your own voice. And it took me all these years because I could have never told this story when my parents were alive. I was too busy. And by parents, I mean my mom and my biological mom and my stepfather, who raised us from when I was in third grade on. I could have never told that story, not in the way that I did, because I never would have put myself in a position where I felt like I was hurting my mom. And I know that would have been difficult for her. And I wasn't interested in telling that story decades ago. But when the heartbreak happened, I knew that this man had stepped into my life so that I could experience this heartbreak and then try to figure out how to put the pieces back. And in that healing came this book and this memoir.
That's an amazing story. It's called Raised on a Lie.
Raised as a Lie.
Yes, and Raised and the Lie. And you have another book that's coming out called Every Damn Thing. And you've been kind to give our listeners a gift. Everybody take a look at the show page and you'll see a link there. It says winteverydamnthing.org, and there's a slash there before the Rise Journal. And it is a five reflective prompts to help people basically release what no longer fits and to help us to gain clarity. But I think that's so apropos for the stage of life that I think many of the women who listen to this podcast are currently experiencing. And thank you, Dr. Naeema, for your wisdom and for your transparency and vulnerability and for being willing to share such wonderful information and wisdom with all of us. It's been great having you on the V.I.B.E podcast today.
I got to say that this is such a special treat. Your energy is contagious, and I have learned so much just in this short time that we have spent together. And I love that. I love that when we get an opportunity to exchange ideas and really connect in the service of helping other women move the needle in their life. So thank you.
We move the needle a little bit. Every little bit helps. Listen to you and your stories, Dr. Naeema, are fascinating. Everyone, please make sure you go ahead and visit her on her social media, her website, and also purchase the book. Take a look at the journal. You will have a wonderful journey with Dr. Naeema in her world. And thanks again for all of you who are listening. I know you could be listening to a lot of other podcasts, but I'm glad you landed here. Please come back. Don't forget to comment and share. I would love to hear how you like the podcast. And there's 150 podcasts here so far. So please enjoy and take a look at all of them. Have a fantastic day, everybody. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Vibe Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.